Hi, in this video I'll be discussing installing the Unix Linux agent for Centrify Infrastructure Services, formerly called Centrify Service Suite. We'll just be doing the identity and privilege functionalities. We will not be doing the auditing. I'm assuming you've already watched the other videos for setting up the OU, setting up the backend GUIs, getting the zones ready, and getting the test user all ready. So please refer to the other videos for all those setups. So what I'll be doing here is we'll be setting up and verifying the back end. We've already done most of the setup already, and we're going to verify everything else is all ready to go, the OUs, the test users, the zones, and all that. Show you how to download the Centrify agent packages for your operating system. Either get the specific one, or you can download the all agents zip. We want to discuss preparing the Unix machine. Talk about etcresolve.com for Active Directory's DNS. You can also add the Unix machines, your test Unix machines, AD into DNS. You want to verify the sites and services. We'll talk about that. We're going to verify the machine is ready to run, ready to join AD by running this tool. It's an AD check tool. Sometimes Unix Linux machines aren't ready to join AD. They can't reach certain things on the network. Maybe it's a firewall up or something like that. And we need some local Unix credentials, a deployment account, some type of sudo rights, or the root password if you're going to SU to root. And we'll also discuss the creation of Unix machine object in AD, about pre-creating or during the join, about the rights. You need to have certain rights, and you need to know where you're going to put it. We're going to install the agents and join to a Centrify zone using, discuss that you can use it one of three ways. I'll actually show you doing the deployment manager. It's a nice tool that can use SSH credentials to log in and push out Centrify packages for Unix Linux machines. We're going to discuss manually doing it with the install.sh wrapper script. So at the Unix Linux agent itself, or machine itself, we're going to install the agent packages manually, either with a wrapper script or doing it with the RPM commands for CentOS. And then discuss the AD join command from Centrify, which actually sets up that AD bridging. And we're going to verify the agents and test user login. All right, so let's get started. So I have two Linux machines here. You're going to probably have one to start off with. You want to make sure these machines are a part of the network, that you can ping them, and that they're in DNS. So I'm going to bring up these machines. I have PuTTY already. In the last video, we installed the Centrify backend software, and one of those was PuTTY. If you haven't made a shortcut to it already, you can use your own PuTTY. You don't need to use a Centrify PuTTY. But the Centrify PuTTY was installed. I'm going to see program files. Wrong one. Program files, Centrify PuTTY, and there's PuTTY right there. So I made a shortcut to it, and it brings up. There's one thing to note inside of here. By default, the Centrify PuTTY, if you go on the left side under SSH and under auth and click on the GSS API, you'll notice that's checked. If your test user you log into the Unix Linux machine is the same as the user you're logged on now, like mine is Diana Worth, and that's my test user, this PuTTY will try to log you in with GSAPI, will try to log you in a single sign-on. So it's going to grab your Kerberos ticket, and we'll discuss that as well. So on these two machines, I have two of them. You might only have one. I'm going to log in as my account. We need an account, a local account to log in. Some people can use root. A lot of people have root turned off for SSH logging in. So you need an account that can log in, and we also need oh, I did two of the same one. You also need SU capabilities or sudo rights. So I have two machines here ready to go. Now these machines are on the network. So if these machines are static IP, you're going to want to put them into Active Directory's DNS. Active Directory, you join these machines to Active Directory, they need to know about it. So I've already put these machines into Active Directory's DNS. If you don't know how to do that, either talk to administrator, or I can show you right here. Inside your DNS tool for the domain, you bring up the DNS manager, and you can go under forward-looking zones, find your domain, and you see I've already added my test machines here. All you do is you right-click in this white space and say new host, type in the name and the IP address, and make sure you click this button right here. and you'll be all good. Now you have the static IP of your test Unix machine in Active Directory's DNS. If they're DHCP, you won't need to do that. And then these machines themselves, they're going to need to know about Active Directory's DNS. So the easiest way is to modify resolve.conf to point to Active Directory's DNS. Look at that one. So I've already done that. So I'm pointing to my DNS machine in Active Directory. So let me see here. I'll just put this machine over here. So I have this machine right here. This is my new CentOS machine. I'm going to deploy software in here using the software tool, and on the N-Sen6 I'm going to do it manually. But either way, I need to have DNS set up. So you could, if you're pointing to Unix DNS, as long as your Unix DNS has to be playing nicely with Active Directory's DNS, that's another way to do it. The easiest way here is, again, just modify your resolve.conf to point to Active Directory's DNS. My .11 machine is actually offline, so I'm just going to modify this. Didn't have that right. So make sure you have this right. This way I can show you a warning here. So right. So I have it all ready, and on this machine, you'll see I'll get a warning when I go to do the analysis. So my DNS is all ready to go. I have it in Active Directory's DNS, and my Unix machine's ready to go here. Again, I logged in as a local account. I have sudo rights to local account. You need to be able to install software, so either have sudo rights or the root password. I do not have any Centrify tools loaded on here yet. I can do a grep through the package manager. Show you there's no tools. So one thing we want to do is download the packages. I have it all ready to go, so we need the agent package. You can either download one or download them all. I have the all agents disk here, or I downloaded the package. So here's the Centrify support portal. If you haven't downloaded the software yet, if you go to Download Center, this is the way it's going to look in May of 2018 when I'm recording this video. The latest version, if you scroll down, should be right here on the top. Right now, 2018. When you're watching this video, it might be .1 or .2. But you click on the latest. We already downloaded this in earlier videos that set up the back end. Now I need my agent. I only need one agent. I can scroll down to the all package, the all-in-one. If I'm going to do more than one, just download the all. You get Ubuntu, you get Red Hat, you get Debian, all those things in one. Or you can scroll down and just get the one you need. A lot of people just need Red Hat and CentOS or something. I went and downloaded the zip file. So I have that ready to go. Another thing you'll need, since we're doing this offline, if you scroll back up, we're going to need the offline manifest. This is basically so the deployment manager tool knows what the latest packages are. So if you click on, I went to the top, under Tools and Troubleshooting, click on that deployment manager, offline manifest, and then right here. I want to download this. You notice at the bottom it's an XML file. So I'm going to download that. You might get a EULA, accept the EULA, close it out, and now you can download it. Put it somewhere you remember it. I've already done this. So now you want to have that XML file, and I have mine sitting right here. It's an offline catalog. So I got that, and I'm all ready to go. The other thing is we're going to join these Unix machines to AD. We need to have a computer object inside of Active Directory that represents these Unix computers, just like a Windows machine. So in this, in my demo environment, I have that right. So the person doing the installation of the agent packages is going to put in an ID and password that has the right to create that object in AD. But where are we going to put it? So if I bring up ADUCT here, I need a location to put that. A lot of people don't like to put it on the computers. You got to think about this. If you're the admin in your environment, you can do whatever you want. If somebody made you an OU called Centrify, if that AD person has a place for you to put it, we can put it there. Or inside of here, maybe you'll make a new container and call it Linux servers, and you'll put yours there. Or if you don't have any of these rights, maybe you can get someone to pre-create this computer for you, and I'll talk about what to do if this is pre-created later on in the video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a location to put my Linux servers. I like to make an OU called Linux servers. Again, I'm putting it outside the Centrify. The Centrify administrator needs to have full rights to the Centrify OU. They do not have to have full rights on where the computers go. In my environment, I just happen to have those rights, but you might not. But again, talk to your AD administrator. Where do you want to put the computer objects? And have that ready, and again, you got to have permissions to do that. So we're all good to go. I'm going to take these Linux machines, and I'm going to join them to Active Directory, and I'm going to join to a Centrify zone. I'm going to bring up my Access Manager. All this should have been done in the previous videos. You'll notice I still have my zones all ready to go. I have a child zone called Linux. And if I right-click on Linux and do Show Effective User Rights, I'm all ready to go with my test user, Diana Worth, who happens to be the same user I'm logging in now. So we should be all good to go. I can minimize this. And Deployment Manager. When we first installed our back-end software in this, the prerequisite for the Microsoft SQL Compact database was needed for the Deployment Manager and then for the Access Manager if you wanted to import sudos. It's a temporary database for the Access Manager, and this one, Deployment Manager, it's a permanent database where we're going to store credentials. The Deployment Manager tool logs into Unix Linux machines using stored credentials, becomes root or sudo-like privileges to do a package install. Right? So you got to have these rights. To do that, we're going to store these credentials in a database that's local to Diana Worth. So I'm logged in as Diana Worth. This database is going to be stored just on the Diana Worth account. Another person can't run this deployment tool. They have to log in as a shared person. So it's a one-user tool pushing out packages. When you first bring it up, it talks about the product catalog that we just downloaded, that we're going to want to right-click and import the latest one. So I'm going to click OK, and I'll show you how to do that. On the left side here, you see the Centrify Deployment Manager. I can right-click and say Import Product Catalog, and then you want to browse to where you downloaded and put that catalog. There's mine right there. Click Open, look at the timestamp and notice it, and hit Next. This product catalog says what is the name of all the latest agent packages. When we release new agents, we've got to have a new product catalog so the Deployment Manager knows the name of all the agent packages, what's the new versionings and things like that. This should only take a second. It's done. Now notice on the left side, I now have a history. I can click on that history, and I should see a success. You click on it, you go to trace. If you have an error, you can see what the error was. I go back on the left side, click on that top node, Centrify Deployment Manager, and I'm back to here. So there's this left side here, and this is kind of like a little mini wizard in the middle. If I click on history, it changes over here. On the left side, if I click on Deployment Manager, I get back this little wizard type of thing. So what I want to do now is download the software. I like to do the computer second. So I'm going to make sure I can get the software. Click on Download Software. You could connect to the Centrify website, but most people like to download the software ahead of time. So then you copy from a network or local drive, and then browse where those agents were. So you probably, if you download the agents and unzip them, or you just download your one package and have it ready to go. So I know where mine is and go find it. So browse to where your agent packages are, hit Next. It's going to use the catalog. Notice the timestamp. That's the latest one. I'm okay with that. I don't need to import a new one. Hit Next. There's a bunch of things that import it. You might, if you're just doing, say, Red Hat or CentOS, you'll have one AD check tool and one package. I downloaded them all, a different AD check tool for every Linux flavor, and then the actual package for all of them. And then hit Finish. And notice it's getting all that into the GUI. Again, this is all stored, and we're storing this in that SQL database that's linked under Diana Worth, whoever I'm logged in as now. On the left side, you'll notice software came up. I can make this a little wider. I can click on the software, click on Analysis Tool. These are those 80 check tools. This is actually something, later on I'll show you the package when you explode the zip file, the tar zip file for the Linux. This 80 check is inside there. Not a bad thing to send, if you're not the Unix Linux administrator, maybe you sent to them ahead of time, have them run that tool. It can let them know if that machine's ready to join AD. Maybe there's some firewall rules that need to be changed. The infrastructure services, these are all packages. Don't worry about the risk assessor right now. That's another assessment tool. We're doing the infrastructure services, and you should have your package for your operating system that you need. And click on this left side, Deployment Manager, and back to here. You'll notice up here this assessment deployment. Make sure you're in deployment, obviously. If you accidentally click on assessment, you'll be in a different place. We're not doing the risk assessor right now. So make sure you're on deployment. So I've downloaded software So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a computer. So we're going to add one computer at a time. You could discover computers from the network, and then I can put an entire subnet or a whole range, whatever you want to do. So we could go out there and we're going to look for computers. Right now, I'm just going to do one computer at a time. I can put in the IP address, or I'm going to put in the name because I'm already in DNS. So my test machine, it found it because I'm in DNS. So I need an account to log on. Some people do root. A lot of people don't allow root to SSH in. This tool is going to SSH in. So I have my deploy account, and then how it can deploy install packages. Well, he's either got a SU to root, or he has a sudo rights. My guy has sudo rights. So type in. So this is the sudo password. If you're going to SU to root, this is the root password. All right. I'm doing sudo. I need the sudo password for deploy. Hit next. Now here's deploy's local account password. And hit next. And now I hit finish. So now basically it's using that ID and password. It stored that ID and password, by the way, first of all, the credentials for deploy for this machine, New CentOS. It's stored that we can use it later on, but it's using that to log on. Look at that machine. Look on the left side, see that little hourglass. If I click on there, you'll see what it's doing at the bottom, retrieving information. And on the left side, you'll be able to expand it now. You'll get computers. The little hourglass is sitting there. Give it a second. It's going to take a second here. I'll pause the video. When it finishes, you see on the left side, what I can do is, again, go to All Computers, and then I can click on this New CentOS and expand that as well. Maybe make this a little wider. So if I click on the All Computers, you'll see all your computers listed on the right side here. I got one. I'll see history. What I just did was a success. You can double click. If you have an error, you can go to trace and figure out what happens. Maybe you typed in the wrong password. So it stored the wrong password, and you're going to have to correct that. Look at the very last thing this thing did, logged in and looked at a bunch of things, including the password and group file, because that's where you see users and groups. A little side note on users, because this tool can log in, become root, or have root-like privileges, we can do certain things like reset passwords. So it's a pretty cool tool. Right now, what we're going to do is deploy packages. So if I click on the All Computers, I can now, on this side, if I right-click, you notice manage software is grayed out. I can't deploy the package until I analyze it first. With the deployment tool, we make you analyze it, and you have to fix all errors. You can go with warnings, but you got to fix all errors before we let you install the software. So we're going to right-click and do Analyze Environment. What it's really doing is going to log in, push out that 80 check tool, and then run that 80 check. So I'm going to right-click to Analyze Environment. I need the name of the domain. The 80 check tool takes in the name of the domain. And this is how many domain controllers am I going to try to connect to. I don't need all 10 in my environment. Don't even have that many. So I'm just clicking to, and then click OK. So this might take a minute or so. It's going to connect on there and run these analysis tools. So I'm going to pause the video. Again, on the left side, look at your hourglass and click on it, and then you'll see at the bottom what it's doing. When it finishes, on the left side again, I can click on history, and hopefully I have success here. If you have a failure, click on it and look at the trace. A lot of times the package install will work fine, but the last part, when it you might get a little error or something. So you might have to go and look through this and figure out what's going on. So we just did analysis. Oh yeah, we just did analysis. No package errors. So the analysis might have done some weird things, but hopefully you got okay. So you really shouldn't get package errors. We just did analysis. The package is going to be next. Click on Open Issues, DNS. I got a warning. That's fine. I only have one DNS. Remember on this New CentOS, I deleted that .11. I only got one and said, hey, that's a warning. If you got any errors, you're going to have to clean up the errors. You can't go forward with any errors. So I'm all good to go. If I go back to here, I can right-click, and now my managed software is there. If it doesn't show up, you didn't analyze it, or you still got errors. So now I can manage software. Again, you got to fix all your errors before you go forward. So now I click Manage Software, and here's my options. Centrify Express is a free product. It's basically the same agent packages, but it's modified functionality. It's really meant for some small little labs who just want to play with the product. You can't do zones, can't do a lot of things. It's a real basic clipped version of the product. This is what we want to install. The naming DC stands for direct control. We used to call the standard agent that we're installing now direct control. The part that is AD bridging and privilege management is sometimes referred to as a standard agent. We used to call it direct control. It's still in the software naming here. DA is direct audit. If you're going to install the auditing package as well, you would click this. We're not. We're just going to do the standard package. So click on this middle one and hit next. This is what we want to install. Direct control, again, that's the standard AD bridging, privilege management. We're going to install that. SSH or OpenSSH package is optional. You do not need to do that. It is not required. If you want to do Kerberos single sign-on, you just have to modify your SSH to allow that GSS API. Remember in the PuTTY GUI, I showed you that the PuTTY is an SSH client. The client and the server both can handle GSS API. They both can grab the Kerberos ticket and use it, or the client will grab it and send it over to the server. You need to have a server to use that, so you can configure your own SSH package to do that. Centrify package is already configured to do that. Plus, we have some other bells and whistles, so I'm going to go ahead and install that. I recommend it unless you have a reason not to install the package. If you've done a lot of customization to your OpenSSH, don't install ours. All right. We're going to add a computer.zone. We've already made the Linux zone. AutoZone is really for small, uncomplicated environments. You don't want to do that anytime you want to do any kind of lots of policies where you can have explicit control. It allows everyone to log in everywhere. You don't get as much control, and it's really not meant for complex environments. So even in an eval, I like to always use a zone mode. So we're going to add to Active Directory and join a specific zone. By the way, you could push the packages out and not do an AD join, not join to Active Directory, and do that manually later on. Or we could use this tool later on. I'm going to go ahead and do the join. So hit next. We're going to create computer objects. So again, the user I'm using, I can type in an ID and password if it's not me. If my current login can do an ID, my current ID can create an object. We talked about this inside of ADUC. We need some place to create that object, and we need to have permission to do that. I'm going to put it on the Linux servers. So I'm going to hit next. What zone to join? I'm going to hit browse, and I can specifically type in. If you got a large environment, you might want to type in something that narrows it down. You could just do find all, and all of your zones are up there. I want to join the Linux zone that I made. You can always open this up. I also want a specific container. I don't want to join. If you don't do anything, it's going to put in the computer's container. I want a specific container. I don't want it there. I want to change. So find where you want to install yours, or create that computer object, and then I'm going to hit next. Workstation is a desktop. So is this a server or a desktop license we're going to use? We're going to use a server license. These are service principal names. SPNs in Active Directory must be unique. You should not have any of these already for a host name that's for a Linux machine. The only time you might is if you're running some JBoss and things like that. Every now and then a JBoss running on a Unix Linux machine, they will recommend that you create this HTTP service principal name for the host name of that Linux machine because the JBoss needs it. So unless you're doing something like that, you'll probably be fine. You might want to make sure there's not already this SPN in your AD environment if you're worried. I'm going to go ahead and take the default. Should be fine for most people. Hit next. This is fine for how we're going to do credentials to be used after we join AD. We're not locking down the root, so I'm going to keep current credentials and hit next. This is a recap, and then hit finish. Again, look on the left. I got an hourglass, and it says what I'm doing. This might take a minute or so. I'll pause the video. Eventually, at the bottom left, it'll stop saying installing software, and you'll see joining zone. And eventually it should say updating information. So basically it just did the install, did the join, and then I'm getting new information to display back and store inside the deployment manager the status. So it all finished. I click on history. Hopefully your add software join zone was success. A lot of times I'll see where the add software was success, but the join zone failed for a couple reasons. The ID doesn't have permission. There's already an object there. You picked the wrong container, things like that. You can, again, double click, go to trace, and see where your problem was. But I was all good. So I'm all good. If I go back to all computers, you'll see some information now. If you scroll over, we know what version of direct control was all that was installed. So if I actually go back to New CentOS, there's my packages. The main package is this one right here, the direct control package, right? These Open LDAP, Open SSL, and curl are really requirements for the direct control. They're small modulars. If you ever need to make an update, we can just update one module at a time. So these are all really part of the agent. And then the SSH package was the optional. So this installed, the Centrify is on there. One of the things I can do is there's a Centrify command called ad-info. It's a great command to see how's the agent doing right now. Active Directory info. You should see connected, license features enabled. It connected to a current domain controller. How do we do that? Sites and services. One of the things I think I might have forgot to mention in the beginning, if you're hard coding at the IP address, or if this machine has an IP address that's static, what is that IP address's sites and services inside of Active Directory? So Active Directory uses sites and services for Windows machines. We use the same thing for Linux. So we found, based on our IP address, what is our preferred site, and based on sites and services, we got our closest domain controller. So we're all good to go. When we were right-clicking and we did show effective user rights inside the Access Manager, the equivalent on this side is AD query user, and that'll show all the users. Or you can say one person at a time. Ours is the same thing right now. We only have one user added on. So my Diana Worth is all ready to go. So I can log on as Diana Worth now. I should be able to log on. So if I go to my PuTTY and I bring up new CentOS. Now, one thing to remember is my auth is set. I'm logged in as this Windows machine is Diana Worth. I have a Kerberos ticket. My GSS API is set up. So if yours is like this, you might get, when you go to log in to new CentOS or whatever your machine is, when you log in, you might see this. Well, it didn't ask for a password. It grabbed my Kerberos ticket. Created my home directory. If I type ID, look at that same one. I didn't put us an Etsy password. We're making a real-time call to Active Directory, and then the UID will match. All right. By the way, some of these things in PuTTY, if we had put the IP address in here, you'll notice, again, it depends how you're doing this. Look at my new CentOS here. 28, right? So if I were to do it that way, even though I have my GSS AP turned on, it's a new session. Notice it asks for the password because my Kerberos ticket is based on the host name, not the IP address. Again, just FYI there. So now I've joined this machine to AD. If I go back into ADuct and refresh, there he is. New CentOS. Double click on it. Go to Operating System. CentOS 6.1, and then on the service pack we put the Centrify agent version on there. If you do an ad-info-v, we actually give you the version 5.5. There's my 5.5. So he showed up under there, and if I go to the Access Manager and do a refresh, my computer should be there. And one thing you'll notice, we showed before, every zone has this Unix data section authorization. Notice under computers, if I open up that computer, it has a Unix data section and role assignments. You could assign someone, reassign somebody for the entire zone. I can have thousands of computers in this zone. What if I want to assign someone to one specific computer? That's where you can go under the computer and do a role assignment. Also, Unix data, you can do where we put it up top, Diana Worth in the global zone. You could do something here. This is what we call computer override. Children, again, inherit from the parents. I could put somebody's Unix data just here. I don't want to do that, but what if this machine, let me show you something here. You could inherit everything from the parent, but I just want to change the UID. So I could actually say, inherit everything from the parent, but on this one machine, it's from 30 years ago, and I used to have a different UID. So this is why we have a Unix data section under the computer. You might need to do some overrides. I don't need that in my environment, but I just want to show you that. So we're all good to go. That's one way of installing the product, using the deployment manager and pushing out. The other way is manually. So let me get out of all of this. So here's another way of installing. If you can't use the deployment manager or just want to learn, again, I don't have any packages on here, but I do have that zip file. or the tar zip file. So I'm going to install the package on here manually. So I'll show you a couple different ways. So you're going to have to become root to do install package. Tar cfz extract verbose, and also is a zip file, and that's Centrify. Extract that. So you'll notice there's an install.sh script. This is a wrapper script, and you see all these packages. We could manually install these packages one at a time, and I'll show you that in a second. There's an AD check tool that we could run. This is exactly what the assessment tool, when we did assessment inside of the deployment manager, that's what it ran. This is how you run it. AD check with the name of the domain. It's going to go through and do that check tool. I'm going to hit Control C. We're going to do that in a second. So this is maybe something you could send to people ahead of time. So you could either RPM these packages manually, or let me just show you there's a wrapper script, install.sh. There's one way of doing it. It's going to basically ask you a bunch of questions, and then it installs the packages. One thing to notice here, my .11, I should have modified this DNS server as well, or my etsyresolve.com, because .11 is not up. It's just going to give me a warning, but it's going to time out here in a second because that machine is not up. But basically, it goes through this little asking you a bunch of questions. So it says, how do I want to continue? Again, we just want to install the DC packages only, so it's S. And it's just going to go through and ask you questions. Do you want to run AD check? No. We just ran it. And by the way, I didn't show you this. So if I scroll up, here's the AD check. I got 2 warnings about my DNS. That's it. If you had an error, you might want to fix the errors before you continue. So I don't need to run it again. Do I want to join domain? Yes. Domain, centrify.vms, whatever your domain name is. Computer container. Again, you got to have permission. Here's a little cheating. I can go to that Linux servers and I can find it, and I can find the object, and I can put it in my buffer. I can put that here. Name of the zone is Linux. And we do not want to use the workstation desktop licenses. We're going to use the server license. And we want to do auto detect for domain controller. Reboot is no. Now, if you're okay with this, you can go ahead. Now, if you want to install the SSH package, again, we could have done all this manually. We could just go through this, and then after this, do the manual. Or if you could go through and say no, and then re-enter everything. And now it's going to ask you, do you want to install the DC package? Yes. And look at all these prerequisites. These are required. Do you want to install the LDAP proxy? No. We don't need the proxy. We don't need the NIST package? No. SSH? Yes. DA? No. All right. Express mode? No. And again, some of the same questions we saw before. All right. So this is how you do it. Go through, and then you hit yes, and it's going to install. I'll show you in a second. Doesn't matter. I'm going to Control-C out of this in a second. Oops. All right. I'm going to Control-C out of this. Basically, the idea is if you would have gone through that, it would install. But the idea is not everyone likes to do the install.sh. Instead of doing that, we can actually just do the RPM. All right. So that install.sh asks you a bunch of questions, or I can just RPM and just and then run it. The install.sh will ask you questions and then run the AD join tool. But I want to show you how to do the AD join command at the command line itself. So I'm going to do the packages manually. So I can do an RPM. The main package is this direct control package. But you'll notice if you try to install that, it says I need all these other packages first. All right. So we broke these up into modulizing it. So if we need to make an update, we don't have to do the entire package. We could just update SSL. So I can do an RPM-I, and then I can do the SSL package, space, the LDAP package. No, not the proxy, the LDAP. And then the curl. And it's done really quickly. You'll see those packages are installed. So now I can do the direct control package, right? The main direct control package, I can do the install. And this should take a second. And I'll pause the video. When it finishes, you can do the RPM command again. You'll see that the package was installed. Now I want to install the SSH package. So I'm going to do a -I and I'm going to install the SSH package. And give it a second. So when it's done, again, you'll have all your packages ready to go. So we've installed the packages, but we have not joined AD. This is important. You could put the Centrify part of your standard build, but we haven't modified anything in PAM. If you look at pam.d and look at the password auth, there's nothing in here about Centrify. We haven't changed anything, right? Not till we run an AD join command. So AD join, this is how we bind the machine to AD, Active Directory bridge. So if you do a help, you can look at it and you get a bunch of options here. We're going to put in the username, password. We're going to put in the name of the zone. There's also a dash, where is it, capital S, for self-service. If you can't create the computer object, and you needed someone in AD to pre-create the computer object for you, you would do the AD join with a -S, self-service. What we're going to do, we're going to create the computer object ourselves. So I'm going to do AD join, -Z for zone, it's called Linux. I need C for container, and again, I need to know where to put it. I can put this in my buffer, or I could just type it out. All right, I need the ID, Diana Worth, whoever your user who has permission to do this. And then I don't do the password because I want to prompt me for it. The last thing you do is the name of the domain. You could do a -V if you have some errors, you want to look at the verbose output. Type in the password, and hopefully you get success. If not, do the -V and look at your errors. Again, AD info like we did before. Get the version. Diana Worth's on there, and again, I can log in as Diana Worth. And all good to go. And the same thing happened. I did the join, so now in Access Manager, refresh. I should have 2 computers in there. And again, in ADUCT, 2 computers. So that's it. So we installed the Unix computers and did it a couple different ways, using the deployment manager tool, which is going to use SSH credentials to push it out, or the install it manually. Manually, you can run the install.sh script. It asks you a bunch of questions, or it's just as easy to do the RPM command, install the individual package you want, and then do the AD join command itself. Sometimes the deployment manager, if you typed in the wrong credentials or some other failure, sometimes it pushes out the packages, and then you can come on and do the AD join command manually. And I showed you how to do all that. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to show you is after we did the install, wrong machine. When we did the install, I forgot to show you we're in pam.d. There's now some new stuff. So Centrify, the AD join command modifies PAM. So now you notice Centrify's in there. So we have our libraries inside of here. So we modify PAM after the AD join command, but not before. Again, that's important. You can push the packages out, but don't do anything until you actually do the AD join. One thing to be careful for is though pushing out the SSH package. If you're going to modify your SSH package with ours, that could make a difference. Even though you haven't done the AD join, you've modified SSH, which could cause issues if you've done some customization. Other than that, the PAM and all those things, we're not going to modify until the AD join command comes out. And I believe that's it. I showed you everything I wanted to show you, and I thank you very much.